He left me waiting at the courthouse on the day of our wedding. No call. No explanation. Just silence. And then his best friend showed up. With a marriage license. You can cry over him, he said, or marry me instead. And, you were always meant to be loved better. Let me prove it. So I married his best friend. And ended up in the right story. I had the whole day planned. The outfit, the ride, even the subtle champagne blush on my cheeks. Today Brandon and I were finally going to register our marriage. 10 years. That's how long we'd been together. Through college applications, job changes, even the loss of my mother. I stayed. I fought. I waited. And now I stood outside the civil affairs office, gripping my phone like a lifeline, watching happy couples walk past me into the glass doors. Smiling, laughing, holding hands. Every time the door swung open, I half hoped I'd see him rushing in, flowers in hand, apologetic and breathless. But all I got was silence. Call 1, no answer. Call 2, straight to voicemail. I hit redial until it hurt. By the 10th call, my nerves had frayed to pieces. The sun was too bright. My dress clung uncomfortably to my back. The makeup I had carefully applied that morning felt like a mask cracking in slow motion. And then, on the 11th try, it connected. Hello. A woman's voice. Soft, lilting. Too calm. This is Vanessa Lynn. Brandon is with me right now. He's helping me check into the hospital. Who's calling? The name rang in my ears like an alarm. Vanessa Lynn. A name from Brandon's past. A ghost with perfectly curled hair and lipstick that always matched her shoes. The woman he never let me bring up. The one his sister Rachel once called off limits. Kept my tone even. This is Clara. His fiancée. Oh, she chirped. Sorry, I didn't mean to, he mentioned you. I'm just having a minor procedure and I asked him to come. He said he'd be done quickly. Did you need him for something? I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. No, I said. I don't need him anymore. And I hung up. Just like that. No drama. No tears. Only silence. I stared at the call screen, then opened our last chat. No sweet good mornings. No countdown to today. Just some dry conversation about whether he should wear gray or navy. I typed one sentence. Brandon, we're done. Wedding's off. Don't contact me again. This time he replied within seconds. Claire, can't you just behave? Vanessa really needed help today. We'll sort out the certificate when I'm back. Behave. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, past the heartbreak into pure disbelief. We were supposed to be registering our marriage. And he was playing chauffeur for his first love. I didn't respond. What was there to say? That I understood? That I'd wait again? No. Not this time. I walked back down the steps of the civil affairs office, my heels tapping like a metronome, counting down the end of something I'd built in my head for too long. I felt like I was watching my own life from above. Like I'd become a background character in someone else's wedding story. I reached the edge of the sidewalk, waiting for my driver to circle back, when I heard a familiar voice. Clara. I turned. There he was, Ethan Walker. Brandon's best friend. The quieter one. The one who always remembered to say thank you, who held doors open without trying to impress anyone. He was dressed neatly in black slacks and a slate blue shirt, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. His expression tightened the moment he saw my face. Pale. Are you okay? I blinked, unsure what to say. Did he trailed off, then asked gently, did Brandon not show up? I could barely nod. I was here to meet someone, he added. But when I saw you standing alone, I figured. I wanted to lie. To save face. To pretend this wasn't what it was. But my throat burned with unspoken truth. We broke up, I said quietly. Ethan's face changed, just slightly. A flicker of something I couldn't place. Pity, anger, relief. Then unexpectedly he said, do you want to get married? I laughed, out of shock. What? You're already here, he said simply. And you're not the kind of woman men should leave waiting. I don't have anyone else. You don't have to be alone. You're serious? He nodded. I know we're not close. But I also know Brandon doesn't deserve you. And he hesitated, then added, I've always admired how you carry yourself. You deserve someone who shows up. Even if it's unexpected. The world felt like it tilted under my feet. How had one day unraveled a decade and rewritten everything I thought I knew? I can't answer that, I said at last, my voice trembling. Not now. Ethan nodded. No pressure. No frustration. Just calm acceptance. I'll wait here, he said gently. Whether you walk back in with me or walk away, I'll respect your choice. I stared at him. At the man who had never once let his presence overshadow Brandon's. At the man who was offering me something not with desperation, but with dignity. A woman behind me giggled. Somewhere down the block, a flower vendor shouted about peonies. I looked down at my hands. They were empty. No flowers. No ring. But no more lies either. I turned back to Ethan and gave him a small nod. Not an answer, just acknowledgement. Then I whispered, "Give me a few days." He nodded once. "As many as you need." And for the first time all day I breathed. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. You'd think I would after standing alone outside a civil office in heels that sliced my feet and a dress that now felt like a costume. But I just sat at the edge of my bed, still wearing the same clothes, staring at the little red string bracelet Brandon once tied around my wrist for protection. I snapped it off. It landed in the wastebasket with a soft thud, next to an old movie stub and a broken comb. At 8:06 a.m. the next morning, Ethan messaged me just one word. Breakfast. No pressure. No emojis. Just presence. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the message for so long the screen dimmed and locked itself. Then I got up, showered, threw on jeans and a blouse and walked out the door before I could overthink it. Ethan was waiting downstairs with 2 coffees in a paper bag. "You didn't answer," he said. "So I guessed." "You guessed well." He smiled, handing me the bag. "Cranberry muffins. You like those, right?" I stopped mid-step. "How did you know that?" "You always ordered them when we grabbed coffee during Brandon's meetings," he replied. "You never finished the whole thing, just the tops." I blinked. I hadn't even realized anyone noticed. I took the muffin and followed him silently to his car. The drive back to the courthouse felt surreal. Yesterday I stood there as a fiancé. Today, I didn't know what I was. A runaway bride? A woman recovering from 10 years of emotional malnourishment? "You're sure?" Ethan asked softly, eyes fixed on the road. "No," I admitted. "But I know I don't want to go back." "That's enough." We didn't speak much after that. When we arrived, he opened the car door for me, then the building's front door too. Every gesture was quiet, unspoken, but not unnoticed. The civil affairs office looked exactly the same as the day before. Only this time I wasn't looking around for someone who didn't show. Ethan stood beside me, tall and still, his hands calmly clasped behind him. "I have no expectations," he said, his voice low. "No conditions. You don't owe me affection or forever. This can be what you need it to be. For as long as you need it." I looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" His gaze didn't falter. "Because someone should." We filled out the forms, signed the documents, sat for an awkward photo that captured me mid-blink, and him with the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. And just like that we were married. There was no bouquet. No witnesses. No matching rings. Just 2 red booklets handed across a laminate counter. We stepped outside into the daylight again, a soft wind brushing past us. Ethan looked down at the booklet in his hand. Then at me. "This, I'll keep it for now," he said. "Unless you want it." "No," I replied. "You hold it. I'm still processing the fact that I have a husband now." He chuckled. "Fair enough." Back at my apartment, the silence greeted me like an old friend. Ethan waited in the doorway while I walked around the space I once shared emotionally with a man who never truly moved in. The photos on the shelf. The slippers by the bed. The half-used bottle of his cologne in the bathroom. Everything still whispered Brandon. It needed to stop. I went to the closet and pulled out the box labeled keepsakes. Inside were letters he wrote when he was drunk and apologetic, cards he scribbled on our anniversaries like an afterthought, and that scarf he left during our first winter together, gray wool with a tiny hole near the fringe. I threw it all in a garbage bag. Every piece. The only thing I kept was the dusty orchid plant on the windowsill. It had never bloomed, just like us. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching quietly. "You don't have to help," I told him. "I know," he said, stepping in anyway. We worked in silence. Me sorting, him lifting boxes, helping me stack everything I didn't want anymore by the front door for donation. At one point I found an old Polaroid of me and Brandon at a beach bonfire. He was looking at the camera but I was looking at him. It hurt. Not because I missed him, but because I remembered the version of me who thought that gaze meant something permanent. I ripped the photo in half. Afterward I sank into the couch, exhausted. Ethan returned from taking the trash down and handed me a bottle of water. "You okay?" he asked. "I feel like I just buried a part of my life." He nodded. "Maybe you did. Or maybe you just made room for the part that was waiting to live." His words lingered in the room like a fresh scent. I glanced at him. "Ethan. Did you always know he wasn't good for me?" His reply was quiet. "I always knew he wasn't showing up for you the way you showed up for him." I exhaled, heavy and sharp. Then smiled a little bitterly. I kept thinking if I just gave more time, more patience, more grace, he'd finally get it. Ethan shook his head gently. "You were giving it to the wrong man." That evening I listed my apartment for sale. I didn't even hesitate. For too long, I had shrunk myself to fit into Brandon's life. I cooked what he liked, traveled where he wanted, turned down promotions to stay in the same city. And when he delayed the wedding over and over, I told myself he just needed time. But I had given him 10 years. Ethan hadn't asked for anything. Yet in 2 days he'd given me more stability than Brandon ever had. This was the first decision I made for me. No compromise. No conditions. And it felt like freedom. I walked out to the balcony that night, wrapped in an oversized sweater, watching the cars blur into ribbons of light. I held my red marriage booklet in both hands. Not because I believed in fairy tales, but because I believed I could rewrite the ending. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time I wasn't scared of starting over. Because this time I wasn't standing alone. 3 days had passed since I signed my name next to Ethan Walker's on that quiet beige form. 3 days of breathing differently. Of waking up in silence and knowing the man I married, no matter how sudden, how strange, actually meant what he said. He didn't rush me. He didn't hover. But every morning there was breakfast at my door and every evening a "good night, Clara," like a promise waiting patiently for me to believe in it. I wasn't sure if I loved him, but I was sure he made the air feel less heavy. And then just when I thought the worst was behind me, a message came. A known number. "You're Clara Moore, right? The one who waited 10 years to marry Brandon? Want to know why it never happened?" My fingers hovered over the screen. Another prank? Another anonymous insult? I should have blocked it. Should have laughed and thrown the phone into the couch cushions. But instead I typed back. "Who is this?" The reply came fast. "Come to Vanessa K. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. booth 7. I'll explain everything." Vanessa. The name made my stomach twist. Could it really be her? The woman on the other end of that hospital phone. The one with the sugary voice and the perfect timing. The one Brandon never allowed me to mention. The one whose name still echoed in my mind. The next morning I stood in front of my closet longer than I should have. This wasn't a date. It wasn't war either. It was something else entirely, stepping into the past that never let me in. I chose a lilac dress. The one Brandon once said made me look soft. I wasn't wearing it for him. I was wearing it to bury that version of me. Vanessa Cafe was upscale and minimal, with white and gold decor and a faint scent of roses in the air. A place where secrets wore perfume. I spotted her instantly. She sat in booth 7 as promised. Petite, porcelain-skinned, with flawless makeup and eyes that gleamed like sharpened glass. Her white dress draped around her like snow, delicate and pristine. She smiled when she saw me, as if we were old friends meeting for tea. "Clara," she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I'm so glad you came." I sat, slow and composed. "I assume you're Vanessa." "You assume correctly." She signaled the waiter. "Latte for her." "That's what you drink, isn't it?" I stiffened. "How would you know?" "Oh, Brandon told me," she said casually, her manicured nails wrapping around her espresso cup. "He used to mention you. Often." My lips stayed pressed into a polite smile. "So why am I here?" "To confirm something," she said sweetly. "Woman to woman." I said nothing. She leaned in. "Brandon and we were together once a long time ago. We were each other's firsts. You probably know that. But what you don't know is, he never moved on." I gave a light scoff. "He was with me for 10 years. As a placeholder, she said gently. A distraction. Until I came back. I tilted my head. If that's what you came to say, you've wasted both our time. She chuckled. You're proud. It's cute. But pride doesn't erase history. I narrowed my eyes. You left him. Only because I had to. Family things. Timing. But now, she reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. With a few swipes, she turned the screen toward me. There, clear as daylight, was a photo. Her. In Brandon's kitchen. Wearing one of his shirts. She smiled at the camera, one arm draped over his shoulders. My throat closed. That was last week, she said. He made me pancakes. Funny, right? Said you liked them with strawberries, but I prefer blueberries. I forced myself to meet her eyes. You're lying. She leaned back. Ask him yourself. We slept together. I flinched. Just slightly. She noticed. I thought you deserved to know, she added softly. Since you gave him 10 years. It would have been cruel to let you think it was real. I stood. My legs were numb, but I held my chin high. I'm not going to fight over a man who couldn't even keep his appointment, I said coldly. If you think this wins you something, it doesn't. You're not his first love. You're just his latest excuse. Vanessa's eyes flickered, for just a second. Then she smiled. That confidence won't last, she said. We'll see, I replied and walked out without touching the latte. The air outside hit like ice. I stumbled down the sidewalk, breath shaky, heart pounding behind my ribs like it wanted out. I kept replaying her words. We slept together. He made me pancakes. Ask him yourself. But I didn't need to. I already knew. The signs had always been there. The missed calls. The vague answers. The shift in his eyes when I mentioned her name. I just didn't want to see it. My phone buzzed again. Brandon. Can we talk? Of course he was texting now. Not when I waited outside the registry office. Not when I cried in my car 3 nights ago. Now after his mistress sent me photos. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. Back at home I found Ethan waiting at the door holding 2 grocery bags. He lifted them wordlessly and nodded toward the kitchen. I followed him in silence, watching him unpack vegetables, eggs, and a bottle of sparkling juice. Rough morning? He asked gently. I didn't answer. Just dropped my bag on the couch and slumped onto a stool. He set down the knife, walked over and handed me a glass of water. Want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not yet. He nodded. I'm here when you're ready. That night I lay in bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. Vanessa's voice echoed in my skull like a mocking lullaby. I reached for my phone again, reading Brandon's message over and over. I wanted to scream. To cry. To go back in time and slap my old self awake. But instead I whispered aloud, you chose her. And then I blocked his number. Not out of pettiness. Not out of rage. Out of peace. After Vanessa's smile, after her syrupy words, after the knife she dressed up as kindness, I went home and sat on the floor of my living room. Not the couch. Not the bed. The floor. I leaned against the wall and stared straight ahead, my fingers still curled around my purse as if I'd forgotten to set it down. It wasn't her words that crushed me, it was how familiar they sounded. Because deep down I had always known. I just refused to look. Brandon Reed had never come into my life with fanfare or fireworks. He came dressed in charm. I still remembered the first time I met him. It was at a dinner hosted by Rachel Lynn, my then boss, and Brandon's older sister. She was poised and brilliant, the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned the air. We'd just closed a major design contract, and she'd invited a few of us for a celebration at her estate. I was pouring myself a drink when he walked in. He wasn't flashy. Just easy on the eyes. Clean-cut suit with a loosened tie and that lopsided smile that seemed carved out of practiced flattery. Rachel didn't tell me she hired supermodels, he said with a wink. I rolled my eyes but smiled. And she didn't tell me her brother was a walking cliché. He laughed and the rest fell into place. After that night he kept finding ways to appear. Dropping by the office, bringing coffee, texting me memes and playlists. It was harmless at first. And then suddenly it wasn't. We started dating. Or rather, I started believing we were dating. Took him 6 months to use the word girlfriend. Another year to introduce me to his extended family. Jason noticed before I did. I'm just saying, he said over ramen one night, don't fall too fast. Not every man deserves that kind of loyalty. I'd waved him off. Brandon's just careful. He doesn't rush things. Jason had looked at me long and hard, then muttered, or he just knows you'll wait. I didn't want to hear it. Not then. Because Brandon made me feel chosen, when he remembered to. But the signs were always there. He never spent the night at my place. He said he slept better in his own bed. He resisted every suggestion that we move in together. Why mess with a good thing, he'd say. We have our rhythm. Even when I asked about the future, about marriage, about kids, he'd laugh and say, "You sound like my mom." It became a pattern. I'd ask. He'd deflect. I'd swallow it and call myself patient. Because that's what love was, right? Forgiving. Waiting. Understanding. I remember one winter when my car broke down on the way to my company retreat. I called Brandon 3 times. He texted an hour later. "Sorry, babe. I was with clients. Did you figure it out?" I did. Jason came and picked me up from the highway in the middle of a snowstorm. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just handed me his coat and blasted the heater. I shook myself out of the memory and stared at the ceiling. I had compromised so many times, I didn't even remember what the original boundaries were. The dinners I planned around his schedule. The birthdays that became rain checks. The time I passed on a promotion in Chicago because he wasn't sure about long distance. He didn't ask me to stay. I just assumed I should. Because Brandon had always known, deep down, that I would never leave. Until I did. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. I picked it up and scrolled through my favorites. I hesitated. Then hit dial. It rang twice. "Clara." His voice was sleepy, rough. "Everything okay?" I couldn't speak. "Clara," he said again, this time sharper. "What happened?" I swallowed. "Can you come over?" He didn't ask questions. "I'll be there in 10. When Jason walked through the door, he didn't greet me with a smile or a hug. He just walked over, crouched down to my level and looked me in the eye. "I need you to breathe," he said quietly. And just like that I started crying. Not graceful tears. Ugly ones. The kind that come in waves and leave your body trembling from the inside out. He didn't say a word. Just held me, rubbing slow circles on my back like he used to when I had nightmares as a kid. I cried until there was nothing left. Then I told him everything. How Brandon stood me up at the civil office. How another woman answered his phone. How her name was Vanessa. How she smiled like she owned him, like I had just borrowed him for a decade. I told him how I didn't scream, didn't chase, didn't beg. I just walked away. Jason listened without interrupting. When I finally fell silent, he spoke. "Thanks for not marrying him, Clara." I blinked. He didn't say "I'm sorry." He didn't say "I told you so." He just said, "You've always deserved more." Later we sat on the couch, eating instant noodles because neither of us had the energy for anything else. Jason nudged my bowl with his chopsticks. "So, this new guy. Ethan." I smiled tiredly. "What about him? He good to you?" "Yes." "Would he come get you in a snowstorm?" I laughed, soft and real this time. "Yeah. Probably with a thermos of hot chocolate and a playlist." Jason nodded like that was the only approval Ethan needed. "Don't fall too fast," he added. "Too late," I whispered. That night after Jason left, I curled up in bed, not alone, not broken. Just healing. Fully. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't see Brandon's smirk or Vanessa's perfect lipstick. I saw a man standing at the courthouse door asking gently, "You don't have to be alone." And I believed him. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the storm arrived. I had just stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around my head, skin still damp, when I heard the buzz at the front gate. Ethan was already at the intercom. He turned to me slowly. "It's Brandon." I froze. Of course it was. He'd been silent since the messages, since Vanessa, since the phone call I never returned. But I knew him well enough to predict this. He wouldn't go quietly. Not when something slipped out of his control. Ethan's hand hovered over the panel. "You want me to send him away?" I hesitated. Then tightening my robe belt, I said, "Let him in." If I didn't face him now, I'd never stop looking over my shoulder. Brandon walked in like he still had keys to my life. Same confident stride. Same air of entitlement. But something in his eyes flickered when he saw me standing next to Ethan. No makeup. No heels. Just me, married, composed, unafraid. "Clara," he said tightly. Can we talk? We're talking, I replied. His jaw clenched. Alone. Ethan didn't move. I didn't either. Brandon's gaze flicked to Ethan like a challenge. You married her? Without even telling me. I didn't think I needed your permission, Ethan said calmly. Brandon took a step forward. She was mine. No, I cut in. I was never yours. You just borrowed me until someone better came back. His expression darkened. So that's it? You let him have you like it meant nothing? Ethan's voice dropped ice cold. Watch your mouth. Brandon laughed bitterly. This is unbelievable. My own friend. You left her standing at the registry office, Ethan said, stepping forward. While you played nurse to your ex-girlfriend. Do you even hear yourself? Brandon scoffed. That's between me and Clara. You had no right. No, Ethan said, you had no right. He pulled something from his back pocket. A worn photo faded at the edges. I frowned. The image showed a girl crouched over a bloodied man on the pavement, phone in one hand, panic in her eyes. My heart stopped. I remembered that night. The alley. The blood. The panic. I was 21. It was cold. I had gone out for snacks and I found him, half-conscious, bruised, barely breathing. I called an ambulance. Paid the hospital deposit. Stayed until he woke up. He'd grabbed my hand weakly and whispered, I'll never forget this. One day I'll repay you. I hadn't recognized his face. He had a busted lip and a swollen eye. I never got his name. Till now. My eyes widened. That was you. Ethan turned to me slowly. It was. The room swayed. You never said anything. I didn't know it was you at first, he said. Not until Rachel brought you to that dinner. I recognized your voice. Your hands. But by then you were already with Brandon. And so you just watched? He nodded. Because you looked happy. And I didn't want to ruin it. But then he started disappointing you, over and over. And I couldn't keep watching. Brandon looked stunned. This is insane. I stepped forward and reached into the drawer by the door. I pulled out the red marriage certificate and held it between us. This is real, I said. This isn't revenge or rebound. You were late. He showed up. Brandon stared at it. At me. At Ethan. Then his face crumpled into something I barely recognized. You were mine, he whispered, softer this time. We were supposed to. No, I said, my voice steady. You were supposed to show up. That's all I ever asked. Brandon looked down, swallowing hard. So that's it. I nodded. That's it. He left without another word. And I didn't feel hollow. I felt whole. Later that night, I sat beside Ethan on the couch, the certificate between us. You kept that photo all this time? I asked. He nodded. I almost gave up hope of finding you again. I thought it was one of those stories, fleeting, unfinished. And now. He looked at me. How I know I was meant to wait. I looked down at my hands. I'm still healing. I'm not asking for perfect, he said softly. Just real. I turned to him and smiled. For the first time in 10 years, I said, I think I am. It started with a text from my brother. Jason, tell your husband to meet me at Delaney's. No Clara. Just him and me. I blinked at the screen. Delaney's was Jason's favorite bar. Dark wood, quiet booths. The kind of place where he did all his polite intimidation in peace. The kind where men left either humbled or humiliated. I showed Ethan the message without a word. He raised one eyebrow and said simply, he deserves this. I watched him button his jacket, calm and collected, like he wasn't walking into a lion's den. But I knew Jason. He wasn't angry. He was protective. And when Jason Moore went quiet, he was sharpening his words like knives. Ethan's POV would have been a better narrator for that evening, but since I wasn't allowed, I had to piece it together from what he told me later, and what I saw when he returned. But here's what I do know. He went. Alone. Jason was already seated at the back booth when Ethan arrived. No smiles. No handshake. Just a glass of neat whiskey in front of him and a long silence hanging in the air. You married my sister, Jason said flatly. Without asking me. Ethan took the seat across from him without hesitation. I did. Jason didn't blink. Why? Because she deserved someone who wouldn't make her wait anymore. Jason leaned forward. You think being the rebound makes you the right man? I don't think I'm the rebound, Ethan said quietly. I think I'm the one who showed up. Jason narrowed his eyes. You don't get points for being punctual. I'm not asking for points. I'm asking for permission to stay. There was a beat of silence before Jason took a long sip from his drink. Fine. Let's see what you know, he said. What's Clara's coffee order? Half CAF oat milk latte. No sugar. Extra foam. Jason raised an eyebrow. Her biggest fear? Being forgettable. His jaw tightened. Favorite flower? She says peonies. But she always buys orchids. She likes the challenge. Jason blinked once. That was new to him. He leaned back, folding his arms. What did she want to be at age 13? A veterinarian, Ethan replied without missing a beat. Until she found out she faints at the sight of blood. Jason paused for a moment, then muttered, damn. Still, his tone didn't soften. What makes her cry? When someone makes her feel like she's hard to love. Jason's throat shifted. And what pisses her off? When someone talks down to waiters, cuts off old people in traffic, or leaves wet towels on the bed. Ethan added with a faint smirk, I hang mine in the bathroom. Jason leaned forward again, voice dropping. Why should I trust you? Ethan's face sobered. Because I was there when she wasn't looking. I saw her come second to a man she prioritized every day. I watched her shrink herself to make room for someone who never gave her more than scraps. He clenched his jaw and added, and I'd rather die than be another man who lets her down. Jason stared at him for a long, silent moment. Still unmoved. Until Ethan said quietly, I'd never have let her cry at a courthouse. That was it. Jason's hand tightened around the glass, his jaw twitching just once. Then he exhaled through his nose, pushed the whiskey aside and said, Fine. When Ethan came home that night, I was curled up on the couch, a throw blanket over my knees and the TV playing a documentary I hadn't paid attention to for the last hour. He sat down beside me without saying a word. I glanced over. You're alive. He smiled faintly. Barely. Did he punch you? No. He quizzed me like I was applying for a job titled Clara's keeper. I laughed. Well, did you pass? He leaned in, brushing his lips softly against my forehead. I think I made the final round. The next day Jason called. I picked up immediately. You okay? I asked. Yeah. Pause. Then, he's good. Another pause. But if he hurts you. I know, I interrupted gently. You'll end him. Jason's voice dropped an octave. No jury will convict me. Later that evening, as I helped Ethan set the table for dinner, he glanced over and said, Your brother told me something interesting. Oh. He said you always defend people who hurt you. I smiled. He's right. I'm not looking to be defended, Clara, Ethan said softly. I'm just here to be beside you. I set the last fork down and turned to him. You already are. Close your eyes, Ethan said. I narrowed them instead. Why? He leaned across the passenger seat and whispered, Because this is your surprise. And I don't want you overthinking it until you see it. Your version of a surprise better not involve a billboard or skywriting, I murmured. He chuckled. Just trust me. So I did. I closed my eyes and let the car roll to a gentle stop. I felt his hand rest on mine for a second before he stepped out. Then came the soft sound of his shoes against the gravel, the quiet beep of the car unlocking again, and finally, his voice low and warm. You can open them now. I blinked into sunlight and took in the scene in front of me. A house, no, a villa, rested at the end of a private drive. Not grand in a gaudy rich man's trophy sort of way, but elegant. It looked like it belonged on the cover of a lifestyle magazine. Cream walls, slate roof, soft climbing ivy along the porch posts. French windows framed by gentle gray shutters, and a garden lined with white hydrangeas in full bloom. Is this? It's home, he said. Or at least I hope it will be. I turned to him slowly. You live here. I bought it 5 years ago. Renovated it last year. He gave me a small smile. I didn't know you'd be here. But I think I was hoping. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. I followed him to the front steps. The moment he unlocked the door and pushed it open, a soft scent of sandalwood and citrus greeted me. And then I stepped inside. It was like walking into a dream I'd never told anyone about. The walls were painted a soft sage green, my favorite color. The floors were light oak with handmade rugs in delicate muted patterns that looked suspiciously like the ones I'd pinned years ago on my forgotten home decor board. The furniture was mid-century modern, clean and minimal, yet somehow still cozy. Velvet cushions in dusty blue and honey mustard sat on a cream linen sofa. I froze. "Ethan," I whispered, "how did you?" He rubbed the back of his neck, looking slightly sheepish now. I paid attention. My eyes swept across the living room to the bookshelves, stacked not just with fiction but poetry anthologies, photography volumes, and 3 hardcover cookbooks I owned myself. A single candle sat burning on the coffee table. Lavender vanilla. The exact scent I always lit when I needed to calm down. I walked further in, hand trailing over the arch of a chair. The kitchen gleamed with pale marble countertops and brass handles. A set of ceramic mugs in earthy colors lined the open shelf. I opened the cabinet beside the stove. Jasmine tea, rose oolong, chamomile, mint, Earl Grey. All brands I used to buy. He stood behind me watching. "The pantry has your favorite ramen. Don't judge me." I turned to him slowly. "You remembered everything." He shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. "You never asked," I said quietly. "You never needed to," he replied. Upstairs, the master bedroom made me stop again. The bedding was cream with a sage green throw. The curtains were gauzy and pale just like I loved, enough to let in light but soft enough to filter the glare. There was a vanity with a mirrored tray of perfume bottles, my brand included, and on the nightstand a copy of my favorite novel, worn bookmarked loved. "You read this?" "Twice," he admitted. I sat at the edge of the bed, overcome. Brandon once bought me a bottle of perfume that made me sneeze. When I told him I didn't like it, he laughed and said, "Then wear less." Ethan stocked an entire house with the scent he'd only ever caught on my wrist in passing. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I wandered to the guest room, then to the sunroom filled with potted herbs and cushions, a window seat tucked under bay windows. "Do you want to see the garden?" he asked gently. I nodded. Out back, a wooden pergola framed a patio set. String lights hung overhead, swaying slightly in the breeze. There was a small fire pit surrounded by cozy armchairs, and in the distance, a willow tree curved toward a pond glinting in the late afternoon sun. It looked like peace. It looked like love. But not the loud, passionate kind that burned and broke. The quiet kind. Steady. Constant. I looked at him, standing with his hands in his pockets, watching my expression like it mattered more than anything else. And finally I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in 10 years I felt seen. That evening we sat under the pergola, legs tangled under a throw blanket, a pot of rose tea steaming between us. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan said quietly. "I want to." I turned toward him. "I didn't know I could be loved like this," I whispered. He met my gaze. You just weren't." The wind blew softly through the trees, stirring the wind chimes. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Clara, you don't have to fall in love with me tonight. You don't even have to fall in love with me at all." "I already am," I murmured. He blinked. Then, as if he needed to make sure, "You are?" I leaned forward and kissed him. His lips were soft, but the way he kissed me back was anything but uncertain. And when he pulled away, his voice shook just slightly. "You're sure?" I nodded, breathless. "I'm done looking back. I'm here. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you." That night, wrapped in the warmth of cotton sheets, his arms around me, his breath steady against my shoulder, I didn't think about Brandon. Not once. Not about the red booklet he never earned. Not about the calls he didn't return. Not about the life he left in fragments. Because I had finally found the place where I belonged. And it was built quietly, patiently, by the man who had always noticed everything I thought no one else saw. 2 months had passed since I moved into Ethan's villa. 60 days of warm tea, folded blankets, and tiny miracles I hadn't realized I needed. Like him remembering to restock my favorite yogurt, or drawing the curtains when I forgot. He didn't make grand declarations of love every day, but his loyalty whispered through the house in every tiny detail. And I had fallen. Fully. Fiercely. Not with the desperation of a woman trying to recover, but with the peace of someone who finally felt safe enough to bloom. Still, when I woke up that Sunday morning, nothing felt out of the ordinary. Ethan had left early, which he occasionally did when work called. But this time there was something resting on the edge of the bed. A box. Cream-colored. Silk ribbon. My name on the tag. Clara. Inside was a white dress. Not a wedding gown, not quite. But elegant. Fitted at the waist, soft chiffon lace at the shoulders. Simple and timeless. The kind of dress I'd once said years ago I'd wear if I ever did it my way. And beneath the dress, a note in his unmistakable handwriting. Come find me. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone. There was already a message waiting. The driver's outside. Wear the dress. Let him take you. Trust me. I smiled to myself. So this was happening. The car took me through quiet roads I didn't recognize until we turned down a long driveway lined with lanterns. It opened up into a secluded clearing where an elegant building stood. Glass walls, warm lights glowing from inside, and a sign that read simply, Wax Restaurant. I gasped. With my initials. Claire Yvonne Moore. I had never even told Ethan I liked the name Yvonne. I just mentioned it once in passing during a joke about initials. But he remembered. Of course he did. The driver opened the door. As I stepped out, the restaurant doors parted. And everything inside sparkled. The entire first floor was empty, save for hundreds of candles and floating petals across the floor. Soft music played from somewhere above. Strings and piano, woven into a melody I recognized only after a few notes. It was the song from our first dance at Rachel's engagement party. The night we met. And at the center of the space stood Ethan. In a white suit. His back was to me at first. Then he turned, slowly as if afraid I'd disappear. He looked like he couldn't breathe. Like I was the only thing in the room that mattered. Clara, he said, voice low and steady. Come here. I walked to him, slow, unsure if my legs would carry me the whole way. I didn't even realize I was crying until I saw the smile on his face falter into concern. But I wasn't crying from sadness. It was wonder. It was disbelief cracking into joy. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. And then he knelt. Not flashy. Not performative. Just Ethan. Steady. Kind. Unshakable. He opened the box. Inside sat a ring, not oversized or gaudy. A single diamond framed by 2 tiny emeralds. My birthstone. I know I already married you, he said, but this time I want to do it the way you deserve. He looked up at me. I want to kneel. I want to ask. I want to make sure you're choosing me, not just because I showed up but because I stayed. His voice cracked. I love you, Claire Moore. I loved you before I knew your name. Will you marry me properly this time? The air left my lungs. I didn't hear the door open behind me. I didn't notice the footsteps or the quiet shifting in the room. Until the lights flickered, revealing a glowing banner above us. Claire, will you marry me properly? And from the shadows emerged. Wait. 3 of Ethan's oldest friends. Even my childhood best friend Nora, who lived 3 cities away, stood with both hands over her mouth. They clapped. Cheered. Jason mouthed, say yes, dummy. I turned back to Ethan. Still kneeling. Still waiting. And I nodded, laughing through the tears. Yes, I whispered. Then louder, yes. He stood in one motion, lifting me off the ground as the room erupted. I heard Jason whistle. Rachel shout something about the dress. Nora crying harder than me. Ethan held me close, forehead against mine, our laughter tangled together. You remembered everything, I murmured. Not everything, he said. Just everything about you. Afterward, we toasted with champagne and mocktails and a tiny tiered cake topped with frosting flowers. Rachel made a speech about second chances and watching your little brother fall in love without realizing it. Jason pulled Ethan aside at one point and muttered, I still have a bat in my trunk. Ethan grinned. You'll never need it. Nora hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs cracked. You were always the one who deserved this. Always. We danced. Not on a stage. Not under flashing lights. Just the 2 of us, beneath string lights and candle flickers, surrounded by people who never gave up on love. And this time neither did I. Later that night, back at the villa, I stood barefoot on the patio staring at the sky. Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. You did good, I said softly. He kissed my shoulder. You're mine now. I always was. But this time, he whispered against my ear, you know it. Our daughter was born on a rainy Wednesday morning. The sky hadn't cracked with lightning, no dramatic soundtrack played in the background. Just the steady beat of monitors and Ethan's hand wrapped around mine, grounding me through every wave of pain until I heard the softest sound in the world, our daughter's cry. We named her Hope, because that's what Ethan gave me the night I lost everything and found something far better in return. Hope wasn't just a child. He was proof. Of second chances. Of quiet love. Of slow healing. She had Ethan's eyes, my nose, and a laugh that could melt the worst day into gold. And I had never been more certain of anything than this. I had chosen the right man to build a life with. Not a rescue. Not a rebound. A home. 6 months later we returned to the hospital, but not for Hope this time. My sister-in-law Rachel had just given birth to a healthy baby boy. Jason had called me with the news in his usual gruff but giddy tone. She screamed at me for feeding her ice chips too slowly, he'd said. But she also told the doctor I was her miracle. I smiled at the memory as we stepped into the lobby, Ethan carrying Hope in a soft gray baby wrap against his chest. The hospital was busy that day. Nurses crisscrossed between departments. New fathers paced nervously in waiting areas. A child with a broken arm sat beside a vending machine, happily munching on Cheetos. We took the elevator to the maternity ward. As the doors opened, Ethan leaned in and whispered, "You know she's going to make your brother cry, right?" I smirked. Good. He deserves it. But I only made it 5 steps into the hallway before the world shifted. He was standing at the end of the corridor. Brandon. Thinner. Paler. Dressed in jeans and a sweater that looked a size too big. His eyes were dull, like someone had turned down the brightness of his entire being. For a moment I didn't move. Not out of fear. Or sadness. Just surprise. He hadn't aged badly. He just withered. He spotted me almost instantly. His body froze. His expression shifted. Shock, recognition, regret. His gaze dropped to Ethan, then to the baby wrapped close to his chest. Hope yawned and curled a fist near her mouth. Brandon stared. And then he stepped forward slowly. He stopped 3 feet from me. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. The weight under his eyes. The tremble in his voice. "Clara," he said softly. "You look happy." I tilted my head. I didn't feel anything. Not the ache of old love. Not the sting of betrayal. Not even the satisfaction of seeing him broken. Just nothing. So I smiled. "Come, taken." "I am." He blinked. Like he'd expected more. Like he was hoping for something. Anything. But I wasn't going to give it to him. I glanced at Hope. Her eyes were fluttering shut again. "Excuse us," I said gently. "We're here to meet my nephew." I started to walk. But his voice came again, rougher this time. "Is that yours?" Ethan moved protectively beside me, tightening his arm just slightly around our daughter. "Yes," I said. "She's ours." Brandon swallowed. "She's beautiful. She's perfect." He nodded. Like he wanted to say more. Like he should have. But I was already done. "Take care of yourself, Brandon." And then I walked away. The moment the elevator doors closed, Ethan let out a quiet breath. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. He studied me. "You didn't flinch." I didn't feel anything. Not even anger? No, I turned toward him, meeting his gaze. "That part of me doesn't exist anymore. He doesn't live there." Ethan pressed a kiss to my forehead. "I'm proud of you," he said. I smiled. "I'm proud of me too." Jason didn't even let me speak when we entered the room. "There she is," he boomed. "The woman who gave birth like a queen and still looks camera-ready 6 months later." Rachel groaned from the bed. "Don't flatter her. I've just pushed a watermelon out of my body. The only woman I want to see is a nurse with more ice chips." We all laughed. Hope cooed and waved her little arms as Jason bent down to kiss her forehead. "She's grown so much," he murmured. "She's got your attitude already." "She's got Ethan's patience though," I said. Rachel smiled at Ethan. "He still hasn't cried, you know." But I caught him wiping his eyes when the nurse handed me the baby. Jason rolled his eyes. "Traitor." We stayed for an hour. Held the baby. Took photos. Let Hope pat his tiny head gently. And then it was time to go. As we walked out of the maternity ward, I glanced over my shoulder one last time. Brandon was gone. And for the first time, the absence didn't leave a shadow behind. Only light. Later that night I sat on the porch with Ethan. Hope was asleep upstairs and the world outside was humming quietly under a warm breeze. He passed me a cup of rose oolong tea. "You've been quiet," he said. "I've been remembering," I admitted. "But not in the way I used to." He waited. "I used to wonder what I did wrong," I said slowly. "How I let myself stay in a relationship that hollow. How I gave so much to a man who gave me nothing back." Ethan didn't interrupt. But today I saw him and I realized I didn't fail. I looked up. He just never deserved the woman I became. Ethan reached across and took my hand. "He didn't," he agreed. "But I do." And I believed him. It was 7:03 a.m. when Hope decided Ethan's face looked like a jungle gym. I woke up to a muffled "ow," followed by a squeaky toddler giggle and something thudding to the floor. Rolling over, I saw her perched on Ethan's chest, tugging his hair like it was a prized rope in a game of parental tug-of-war. "Hope," I groaned into the pillow. "What did we say about gentle hands?" "She said she was testing gravity," Ethan mumbled, eyes still closed. "With my forehead." Hope giggled again. "A proud little conqueror of Mount Dad." "You're lucky you're cute," I muttered as I dragged myself out of bed. Ethan peeked open one eye. "That's what you said to me last night." I threw a pillow at him. "You wish." By 8:30 the kitchen looked like a battlefield. Hope had dumped flour on the floor in an attempt to help with pancakes. Ethan had somehow managed to burn half of one in the shape of what he claimed was abstract art. And I had a smear of batter across my temple that nobody thought to mention. "This one looks like a seahorse," Ethan declared proudly, flipping a lumpy, uneven pancake onto a plate. "That one looks like you gave up halfway through life," I countered, inspecting it with mock horror. Hope nodded seriously. "Dada made a sad cookie." "Excuse you," Ethan said. "This is gourmet rustic." "Gourmet tragic maybe," I teased, handing Hope a spoon and praying she didn't use it as a catapult again. He didn't. She used her fingers instead. Ethan and I stared at her for a second as she smeared blueberry syrup on her cheeks like warrior paint. "Is this normal toddler behavior?" I asked, turning to him. "I don't know," he replied. "But she might be trying to summon breakfast spirits." "Better than summoning your mother," I muttered. He snorted. "She's still mad about us eloping, you know." I sent her 3 photo albums and a handwritten note. "You also called her poodle vindictive." "It bit me." Ethan grinned. "That was before it knew you." "It knew." Later that afternoon we took Hope to the park. She insisted on wearing her tutu and rain boots. Ethan tried to talk her out of it. "You look like a flamingo that got lost in a puddle." Hope grinned. "Puddle flamingo." So that's what she became for the day. And honestly, she rocked it. She chased bubbles. Climbed exactly 1 rung of the jungle gym before declaring it too spicy. Made friends with a boy named Max who offered her a rock like it was a proposal. Ethan's face turned pale. "She's not even 2 yet." "She gets it from me," I said smugly. "Over my dead body." "Just your wallet, really." That night after we tucked her in, Hope clutching her stuffed bunny, snoring softly, I stepped out onto the balcony with Ethan. A glass of wine in my hand. A little jazz playing low inside the house. He joined me barefoot wearing one of my fluffy robes. "Nice look," I teased. "It's cozy. And it smells like you. You're such a sap. You married me." I had questionable judgment. "You had perfect judgment. You just had bad luck first." I sipped my wine and leaned into him. "I used to think love had to be hard," I admitted. "That I had to fight for it. Earn it. Shrink for it." He turned, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "You don't have to fight anymore." "I know," I said softly. "You're the calm after the storm. I'm your umbrella, babe." I laughed. "That's the least romantic metaphor I've ever heard. But it's accurate. You're more like my emergency chocolate." He grinned. "I accept." We danced. Just the 2 of us. No cameras. No ceremony. We danced in the kitchen to the silliest playlist he made called Clara Bops. We danced under fairy lights he'd strung in the garden last winter just to see me smile. We danced with hope sandwiched between us, giggling and trying to wriggle away. We danced because joy doesn't need a reason. And love, real love, should never feel like a performance. One evening I found a photo at the back of an old drawer. It was me. From 4 years ago. Eyes tired. Smile hesitant. Wearing the wrong dress for someone else's party. Brandon had taken the picture. And I didn't recognize the girl in it. Because she looked like she was trying to deserve something. I looked up at Ethan across the room holding Hope on his lap, telling her the story of how he battled the kitchen fire demons to make mommy pancakes. Hope squealed with laughter. And Ethan winked at me over her head. That girl in the photo? She didn't exist anymore. I have a family now. Not the kind built out of pressure or guilt. The kind built out of Play-Doh sundaes and burnt pancakes and baby giggles that sound like magic spells. I didn't just heal. I rebuilt. Stronger. Softer. Sure. The man I planned to marry left me in a courthouse hallway. The man I actually married. The end.